Welcome back to Double Fries, No Slaw. Florida State got a big commitment from a four-star quarterback over the weekend in Jaden O'Neal, and I have Jay from Unfair Sports and Locked On Sooners to talk about it a little bit. Jay, how you doing, bud?
Doing good, my man. Glad to be back on the channel. It's been a while.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Well, we were doing the same thing the last time you were on here talking about this. I'll get to that in just a moment, but Oklahoma fared fairly well with this, and again, we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. But on Jaden specifically, we'll jump right into things. What do you like most about him on the field?
Couple of things. One, his leadership, and two, that arm, man. He's got a rocket. He can launch that thing. And I've watched him over the last few years. As you know, he was an Oklahoma commit for a while. He is definitely easily a top 300. He's a top 100 player in the country, in my personal opinion. I think that the ratings will reflect on that as the season progresses. And I've gone out and watched him in private sessions, throw whatnot. I'm pretty close with him and his dad. And yeah, the kid not only has the leadership for his age, the arm is there. The arm is there. He's got some things to refine and whatnot, get his footwork right and everything. But overall, kid's got it. And he's one that I was excited about Oklahoma landing a year and a half ago. Sucks to see him go, but totally understand as things had changed in Norman, especially with the regime adjustments. But Jaden's definitely a huge pickup to me for Florida State.
I noticed that, and I thought this was interesting, and I'll say weird. Weird has a negative connotation, so I don't mean it negatively. But I do think it's different than what we normally see. It felt like Jaden had a really, really good connection with a lot of the people that cover Oklahoma. I saw him on a show last night. I literally had two other Oklahoma reporters / content creators reach out to me and say, like, hey, if you guys get this kid, I'm happy to make an introduction. I was like, man, we really have never done interviews with recruits, so like nothing against him. It's just not necessarily our lane on this channel. I know you had reached out, said you had a relationship with the family as well. That's different. I mean, I'm not saying it in a bad way at all, but it's weird. It's strange. Like usually, yeah, I might talk to the 247 guy or might talk to Nakos or whomever, Wilfong. But it's different for it to be it felt like he had such a good connection with a ton of people. And and so often in recruiting, I'll piggyback off that. When a kid decommits or flips or goes somewhere else. Now Oklahoma did great with kind of a replacement there, or obviously things trended that way with Bentley. But man, nobody had a crossword to say about him. A lot of if somebody flips from your school, usually you're like, man, that kid's never going to be good. And he stinks, and nobody has a negative thing to say about him. And so off the field, it seems like a pretty solid kid too.
Yeah, because it was an unfortunate circumstance with him, right? He committed last summer, and he was all in for Oklahoma, 100%. Well, the coach that he committed to was Seth Luttrell, who was the offensive coordinator at the time. And about midway through the season, Oklahoma realized they needed to fire the guy. He just was not working out properly. And so because he was more of a Seth guy, Brent Venables had a relationship with him and the family and everything. But the big thing was that, hey, we're going to be bringing in a new offensive coordinator. He's going to have to evaluate things. And honestly, it's really going to be on his say. And when they brought Ben Arbuckle in from Washington State, he brought John Mateer with him, which Mateer's older, so there's nothing there to be concerned about. Well, for Arbuckle, he was looking for someone that fits better in the system that he wants to run. Now, granted, based upon Jaden O'Neal's skill set, he reminds me a lot of how Cam Ward was when he was younger. He can move around very well, but he's not going to really run. He's going to look down the field, keep his head focused, and he's going to throw the ball on a regular basis. And he has the arm to do that. And so his game does kind of translate similar to Cam Ward, but John Mateer is a completely different animal. He's more of a running quarterback. He's a true dual threat who has design runs built for him. And so for Arbuckle, it looked like he was looking for something closer to that for himself. He wanted another John Mateer. Felt like that worked a lot better in the system in comparison to Cam Ward, I guess. I don't know. But that's what it looked like. And so in the situation for Jaden O'Neal, he was very professional about it. He pointed out the communication wasn't the way that he liked it, but it's okay. We're working through some things. And so just because of the way that he was all in on Oklahoma after the coach gets fired, and he continued to recruit for Oklahoma, and he really showed that maturity and leadership going forward with it. And when it got to the point where Oklahoma was looking at taking 2 quarterbacks, you realize, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and start shopping around, just in case Oklahoma tries to push, Ben Arbuckle or Jim Nagy pushes us out. And then it kind of got to that point where at the end, when the Florida State opportunity came up, it's a great opportunity. Kid's going to be good. Kid can play. And he's rated high. The ESPN 100 pocket passer, and he's 112th in the country to them. Kid's going to be able to play somewhere. He's going to do good. And so that's why really no one had anything negative to say about him, because he really never said anything negative about the situation in Oklahoma. Even though he wasn't happy about it, he understood that, the business, and, he's just going to continue to do his part. And then when he decided to decommit, the relationships he had already built, he wants to have a really good brand. And he's done nothing but get better and better in that capacity. So that's, to me, is kind of where it jumped out of him being a really good kid just in general. And then recognizing him himself as a quarterback, where his leadership tactics are going to have to be at.
Kind of a two-parter here. Florida State has had to go to the portal back-to-back years, and they've just not been great recruiting and developing quarterbacks. I'll ask you about Kevin Sperry here in a moment, who we spoke about some time ago. But they had to go to the portal again this year, get Thomas Castellanos. There's some ambiguity on whether or not he could get another year next year if things go really well. I think for those listening, I think he played in 4 games in a regular season 1 year, and then played in a bowl game as his 5th game that burned his red shirt. And some people think that now, because bowl games don't count against a red shirt, he could potentially apply for another waiver. I'm explaining all that for a reason. If things go well at Florida State, he applies for a waiver, he plays again next year, whatever, you wouldn't worry about as much about this. But how quickly do you think he could be ready to go? We do see some true freshmen come in and play. Mm-hmm. Usually those are your top 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks in the country. He's just outside of that range, and kind of that top 15-ish range. Thoughts on how quickly he's ready to go, and then also kind of thoughts on fit with Gus Malzahn.
So his ability to be ready to go, he's a legitimate 6'3", 200 and something pounds. And so he's a very solid kid. And so he has the frame, to me, to be able to handle the grind there at Florida State and playing in the ACC against some pretty good defenses or whatnot. It looks like he has the mind for it. He studies the game hardcore, so he's really good at doing that. So to me, I think he'd be ready to play. He could probably play as a true freshman. Would you want him to? Probably not. I'm not really big on true freshmen playing big boy football too early. You don't want them to go out there and have to just figure it out, especially in the first couple of games. But he is one that you could probably see playing later in the season as he gets the playbook all the way down and get really more comfortable and acclimated with the weapons around him. So at his frame and size, I could totally see him playing pretty early. And, it's kind of funny, we mentioned like Kevin Sperry, who was also at one point committed to Seth Luttrell, decommits because of Jaden O'Neal, and now is at Florida State. And then now we have this whole situation here where now they're back together. I've heard good things about Sperry coming out of camp. It sounds like he's actually doing pretty well and very, there's a lot of highs when it comes to him. There's like a high ceiling or whatnot. But I think with the offense that Gus runs, I'm curious to see how he would leverage him, since he doesn't really run a lot. He doesn't do a lot of design runs. Can he run? Yes. Is he a design run guy? Not so much, even though he has the big frame. He'll be more of honestly, he could play kind of like a Cam Newton, but I don't think you would want him to take that type of hit, right? No. You don't want the wear and tear on his body if you can avoid that. But he does a good job of getting rid of the ball, but he also does a good job of holding the ball. Like the way that he plays, to me, he played in California, and he's refining himself. He truly reminded me a lot of Shedeur Sanders. Very accurate, got the arm strength there, runs if he needs to, but he'll hang on to the ball and get his receivers and throw it to a spot to get them open. And that was the thing that Shedeur probably did the best, as a quarterback in college, is he took his time and he didn't panic. He would take a hit sometimes, but he wouldn't panic. And I think Jaden will do something similar. That'll be his similar game set. Now, again, he can run. He will if you need him to. So I'm curious to see how Gus would actually adjust his game to where he can extend the plays to where he could throw the ball downfield.
Sperry will have a little bit of an advantage going into next year, having been in a college system for an entire year as an early enrollee and somebody that's been through spring multiple times, somebody who will have been through fall camp multiple times, through strength and conditioning for a couple of years. When O'Neal will have just done it once, right? When he gets to August or, early September of 2026 as a pure, so kind of take that out of your mind, right? I just told you Sperry's going to probably be ahead. But as pure prospects, is there one you like better?
Purely, I'm a bigger fan of Jaden just because of his size. And that's, like I said, nothing against Sperry at all, because I've watched him throw the ball too. I've seen him at BV camps. I've seen him over at OU for stuff, and the kid's got a spin. Like it's beautiful. Like it's a very nice spin. But, and he's roughly 6'1", 200, where Jaden is 6'3", over 200. I think that's where you get a little bit of advantage from Jaden because he's got that big size and stature. And it feels like Gus does well with bigger quarterbacks anyway. That just kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
So to me, I'd say I'd give a little bit of advantage to Jaden, but of course, with Sperry being in the system for a year, he's probably picked up the playbook pretty fast. And again, he spins the ball nicely. I'd still lean Jaden just because of the size.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of that good stuff too, coming out of FSU that, I don't think anybody would definitively say this, but I think this is Brock Glenn's third year at FSU. And, Sperry may have had moments in camp that would make you think like, man, he might be QB2. Are you going to put a true freshman in it? Something happens to Castellanos. That's kind of that conversation we were having earlier. I don't know, right? Would you trust the third year guy maybe a tad bit more? Probably, but just if they were both true freshmen, right? Skill set wise, Sperry really, really impressed. Not to give you too hard of a time here. I know that you OU fans are pretty happy with Bentley, but we saw Sperry and now we've seen O'Neal. We saw Sawchuk too. We were giving South Carolina fans a pretty hard time a couple of years ago about being like kind of a pipeline to FSU. Is this a pipeline that is being set up? We joke about the IMG pipeline to Tallahassee, things like that. Is OU kind of just a factory for FSU to kind of go pick from here and there?
I mean, it sure does seem like it. I mean, you got to see Sawchuk up close and personal in the Cheez-It Bowl, and so you knew exactly what it was there. And he didn't live up to the lofty expectations we had at Oklahoma. Like similar to Florida State, we're infamous for churning out some ridiculous running backs, and he unfortunately did not. Health-wise, he couldn't. Now, a healthy Sawchuk, he's going to be a beast for you all, for real. Like, he's one running back I loved when he got his health going, and he rushed for like 700 yards in that season. But it seems like as a recruit, it does. The quarterbacks that we decide that we're no longer going to go for, they go to Florida State. So the question now is, how do they produce? Now, I think Jaden's probably going to show out for you all. I have high expectations of him being really good there for you all. I'm still waiting to see with Sperry. Like I said, he's smaller, but I love his spin on his passes. So we'll see if he turns out to it, and then maybe you can call it. I mean, Florida State's been sending people over there to Colorado to Coach Prime. Yeah. So, it's one of the two. We'll kind of see if that pipeline is for real.
Yeah. No, and again, I know Oklahoma fans aren't too terribly upset with how picking up Jaden Ott or picking up Bo Bentley or some of the talent they brought in.
Not really, yeah.
To kind of backfill or replace the guys that have left. Jay, I appreciate you a ton for hanging out. Where can people follow you on social media and then check out some of your OU content that you do?
Yeah, you can follow me at Unfair Sports on the X Bird. That's where I'm usually hanging out, talking usually OU football, SEC, and college football in general. And you can also check me out over at Locked on Sooners, where I'm talking about my guy John. So, TJ, once again, thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you.